Hi, it's John, and welcome to the channel, 7:14 a.m., Friday, August the 8th, with the big blue mug of coffee. I hope you're having a great day today. Looking forward to the weekend, no doubt. I appreciate you being here. If you are a subscriber to this channel, thanks so much. If you're not, please click on subscribe. Thank you. I spent the last several hours thinking about Pierre Poilievre and his news conference yesterday on the Canadian Sovereignty Act. And I have to say, Pierre Poilievre was excellent. Very strong. I did a video on this, which I'll put a card at the end. You can watch it. How weak Carney is, how strong Poilievre. Just terrific. He was great yesterday. And it was very refreshing to see him speaking, and I felt this at times, speaking like an Albertan. I know he's from here, but he's been living in Ottawa. And that stink eventually gets on you if you live in that area. And the stink is now dissipating. He sounded like an Albertan yesterday. It was very refreshing. But I thought he was very strong. But I thought about it, particularly this morning, and I'm more convinced than ever that Canada is dead, that Canada is a lost cause, that Alberta needs to leave. I know it's very strange, but it just got me thinking about how much division there is in this country. His Canadian Sovereignty Act, without getting in it too deeply, has basically drawn a line in the sand for Mark Carney to get things done and giving him a timeline to do it. But it won't get done. You need to think back to the election campaign and what Carney's been talking about since he became the leader of the Liberal Party. What has been his message? Now, I want you to leave Donald Trump and tariffs out of this. I know that's hard. It's like a black hole where everything gets sucked in. Trump and tariffs, but leave that out of it. What was his message? Think about what he stood behind when he went out to rallies. What did it say? 2 words generally, and I think it's still on their website. Canada strong. What does that mean? It means unity, working together, bringing down barriers between provinces to get things done. Are we more unified now than we were before he became prime minister on election night, April the 28th? No, it's worse now than it was before. There's more barriers in the way to getting things done, and I think this is the plan. Bill C-5 was supposed to be the thing that's getting things done. I don't know, they call it the getting things done or get things built in Canada bill or something. It's some nonsense. But if you look at really what Bill C-5 has done now, and Carney has said this many times, he said it during the election campaign and he's said it since, but this is what is in there. And this is what really stood out for me. Before recommending that an order be made under any of the subsections of 1, 3, and 4, the minister must consult with any other federal minister and any provincial or territorial government that the minister considers appropriate, and with Indigenous peoples whose rights recognized and affirmed by Section 35 of the Constitution Act of 1982. So Carney merely calls these things the consensus, but he's now thrown in the way of getting things done these consultations with provinces and consultations with Indigenous people. I've called them his outs because he doesn't want to do these things, or vetoes. This is the additional barrier that's on top of all the other things that are in the way, which Poilievre brought up yesterday. We need to get rid of Bill C-69, the no pipelines law. We need to get rid of Bill C-48, the no tanker ban. We need to get rid of the plastics ban, the EV mandate, the emissions caps. All of these things must go. The demands of Danielle Smith. 9 things, but none of them have been removed. An additional barrier has gotten in the way, and that's Bill C-5. And who determines what gets done? It'll come down to Mark Carney and the Liberal Party. And we know what they want to do, which is not what Alberta wants to do. Everybody can agree we need to get things built, but we can't agree on what needs to get built. What Alberta wants is not what BC wants. It's not what Manitoba wants. It's not what Quebec wants. It's not what Nova Scotia wants. We all have different ideas on what needs to get built. Alberta needs to leave. Yesterday, a reporter asked Poilievre about British Columbia. David Eby says there's no investment in a pipeline out there, so why are we even talking about it, is basically what he's been saying. Is it Tim Hodgson, who's the energy minister under Carney, says the same thing? Here's what David Eby says over and over and over again. This is one of the barriers in the way.
For the pipeline project that Premier Smith is a great enthusiast of, a heavy oil pipeline project, there is no project, there is no proponent, there is no private sector money involved at all that I'm aware of.
He uses this all the time. Poilievre says, well, it's the old chicken and the egg story, and he's absolutely right. Who's going to invest in our country when all those things I just talked about, 69, 48, emissions cap, EV, man, who's going to invest in our country? Until we get rid of those things, we'll never have investment. So this is a barrier that's in the way. He says David Eby is just a single man. He can't stand in the way of these things. British Columbians want a pipeline. Albertans want a pipeline. Canada wants a pipeline. He can't stand in the way, but it's written into Bill C-5. The province says no. It's just another barrier in the way on top of all those other things. And then there's this. This is an article from yesterday. This is really going to get in the way. And then hold tight. Ontario First Nation asked for halt to Ring of Fire mining development. That's the Aboriginal part that's been added in with Bill C-5. They're asking now, they eventually demand, then they'll protest, then they'll go to the courts. And nothing will get built. That's what's going to happen. All of these things, why is Carney wanting to do this? Well, it's all wrapped up in climate change. The previous Liberal government under Trudeau, that's what it was about. That's what Bill C-69 is about, 48's about, the EV mandate, the emissions cap, the plastics ban. It's all about climate change. And those provinces I mentioned, British Columbia, Manitoba, Quebec, Nova Scotia, right across the country, they all think the same thing, even though Tim Houston, the Premier of Nova Scotia, calls himself a progressive conservative. That's what he's about as well. Now, there's something else that came to mind that I thought about when I was thinking about the Canadian Sovereignty Act. And again, if this were to pass and we enacted this exactly the way Poilievre said, it would be great, but it won't get done. But there were other things that have been forgotten since the election campaign. Again, that big black hole of Donald Trump and tariffs has sucked everything away. This was an issue for a short time during the election campaign. There's something else that actually popped up here, but let me just show you. This is the Liberal website. Now, you have to remember that government hasn't sat much this year, probably less than 20 days. They're not back until around September 15th. They're only going to sit, the government, I think, 73 days this whole year. Isn't that disgraceful? Poilievre would have had them sitting all summer to get things done. But there's this. This is the Liberal website. A Mark Carney-led Liberal government will conserve nature and biodiversity, including by creating 10 new national parks and marine conservation areas and 15 new urban parks. He said he was going to do this. What did people say at the time? Well, I think I did a video at the time where I put national parks all the way around Alberta, right down to the United States border. So you put a national park there, no pipeline's going to go through there. Nobody's ever going to get any natural resources. Make a great big giant national park. Nothing will ever get done or put through those places because it's a national park. So this is a way of putting something else in the way, another barrier. But there's something else I saw here this morning that I don't remember him talking about. There's this one here. Let's go back to the Aboriginals. Enshrine First Nations right to water into law. Boy, there's a barrier for you, because pretty much anywhere you go in this country, there's a stream, there's a brook, there's a pond, there's a lake, there's a river, there's a puddle that First Nations could use to get in the way of any natural resource project or pipeline that wants to be built in this country. Just another barrier. Let me tell you a quick story. Personal story here. When I lived back in Cornwall, Ontario, I lived near the 401 main highway. And I asked my MPP, the equivalent to an MLA, the provincial leader there and the provincial elected official there, his name was Jim Brownell. I asked him why we didn't have a sound barrier along the highway. And he said, I don't know. Well, we eventually got it okayed, and they put in a $6 million sound barrier along the highway. If you were to look at Google Maps and Street View, you'd see it there. They call it the Bolton Barrier in Cornwall. My wife and I did this. $6 million. But before they put it in, They held it up for several months because there was a ditch that ran along the highway that about a month a year had some water in it, and they had to do an environmental assessment on the puddle. I'm not kidding. This is the kind of thing that will happen if you enshrine First Nations' right to water into law. I'm more convinced than ever after watching Pierre Poilievre yesterday and talk about his Canadian Sovereignty Act, and again, he was terrific. I'm more convinced than ever that nothing's ever going to get built in this country, and this country is not unifying. It is dividing. It's not Canada strong. It's Canada weak. I want Alberta to be strong and free. Let me know what you think. Give me a thumbs up if you like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell for notifications. I tip my big blue mug to you. Have yourself a great Friday. See you in the next one.